This is Michael Cowen, and welcome to Trial Lawyer Nation.
You are the leader in the courtroom, and you want the jury to be looking to you for the answers.
When you figure out your theory, never deviate.
You want the facts to be consistent, complete, and credible.
The defense has no problem running out the clock. Delay is the friend of the defense.
It's tough to grow a firm by trying to hold on and micromanage.
You've got to front load a simple structure for jurors to be able to hold on to.
What types of creative things can we do as lawyers, even though we don't have a trial setting?
Whatever you've got to do to make it real, you've got to do to make it real. But the person who needs convincing is you.
Welcome to the award-winning podcast, Trial Lawyer Nation, your source to win bigger verdicts, get more cases, and manage your law firm. And now, here's your host, noteworthy author, sought-after speaker, and renowned trial lawyer, Michael Cowen.
Welcome to today's Trial Lawyer Nation. I am thrilled to be joined by a good friend and an even better trial lawyer, Lara Brock. Lara, how you doing?
I'm well. Thanks for having me, Michael.
Well, thank you for coming on. Lara is a fantastic trial lawyer with Espinoza and Brock here in San Antonio. Mainly represents injured workers or workers who were discriminated against or retaliated against for getting hurt, and has just had incredible success, also a leader in many of our organizations. Before I dive in, though, to talk to Lara, I wanted to say thank you and give a shout out to our sponsor, LawPods. LawPods is awesome. They do all the work for us. All you and I have to do is talk. They went here and made sure that we sound good. They do all the editing, all the production. They make all our little sizzle reels for social media. Super easy to work with and great people. So if you're thinking about doing a podcast, which is a lot of fun, everyone ought to do one, I highly recommend LawPods. So Lara, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Looking forward to spring in San Antonio. It's fiesta time.
Oh, that's right. I've lived here for 8.5 years. I have not fiestaed yet. I'm doing something wrong.
You got to start. For those of you who don't have the pleasure of living in San Antonio, we throw a giant party for 2 weeks every May. Lots of festivals and parades. And so come join us for Fiesta in San Antonio.
I'm going to have to wait till next. I'm halfway through a weight loss journey, and I just don't think I can be around the chicken on a stick and all the other stuff and resist right now. So I'm going to. But I have been wanting to do it. I know it's something that's a lot of fun. I grew up with something similar in my smaller town of Brownsville, Texas. We had Chowder Days, and we would have it was an international celebration. Brownsville Matamoros would do it together. But Fiesta's much bigger and grander, so I definitely need to start joining on that. But more to the point, tell us a little bit about yourself and your practice.
Sure. I've been out of school for about 10 years now, and I've worked with my current law partner here in San Antonio since before I even started going to law school. So I feel like I've been in this field for a long time, for the entirety of my career. But we practice primarily in the area of work-related injuries. So we have a couple workers' comp attorneys and then several of us who actually litigate work-related injury cases, which in Texas include companies like Amazon and H-E-B who choose not to carry workers' comp in the state of Texas. So we do a lot of construction and oil field third-party work injury cases, some trucking cases when they come through, but not a big part of our practice. And then my passion projects are our employment discrimination cases. So I get to do some race, pregnancy, sexual assault, sexual harassment cases. And those are just the feel-good cases that make us feel proud of the work we do.
So first of all, what interested you in becoming a plaintiff's trial lawyer as opposed to, all the other kinds of law you could have done?
I decided when I was very young that I wanted to compete every day. And I figured if I could find a job that let me be me versus you on a day-to-day basis and everything that we do, that's what I wanted to do. And so I decided I wanted to be a trial lawyer before I really knew what that meant, and got lucky and found Javier, who is my now law partner. We've been together for 13 years now. He was the president of our local trial lawyers and super involved. And so he just pulled me up and along with him. And so I was thrilled to find a career where I could feel like I was really helping people, making a difference in real people's lives, giving people a voice who are otherwise scared to speak up for themselves, all while getting to have a lot of fun.
It is fun, isn't it?
It is.
Tell me a little bit more about this. You want to compete every day. Where does that come from?
I was super into sports. I played collegiate volleyball, was a 4-sport varsity athlete in high school. Just grew up playing and loving everything as a competition to me. And my husband and I made a rule that we would not do anything competitive against each other. Because whether it's making dinner or working on a brief, I have to be right and I have to win. And so getting to find a job where every single hearing, every single deposition, I'd get to have that little dopamine boost of you won today. And that's what I love about what we do.
Have you read Randy McGinn's book? I'm trying to remember the Fighting
Giants.
Corporate Giants.
Yeah.
It's
Loved
just
it.
interesting because she had something in there, and I'll just never forget it. That one of her theories about why, women didn't stay, not as many women stayed in trial work, is because they didn't play sports, and that they would go and they would lose, and they would not want to lose again, and so they would stop doing it. And of course, that's not all women. And she's saying it, not me. I'm not trying to be sexist, but I do think the experience of you go there, you fight as hard as you can, you don't win, and you get up the next day and you go fight again, is so important. And I think that sports background really does women a lot of good.
It's something
And
we
men,
look
too.
for. Absolutely. It's something we look for in hiring. I always ask the question, tell me about something that you competed in growing up. And I don't care if it's chess club, it can be anything, but I feel like in order to be a good trial lawyer, you have to have that innate sense of let's go. I'm ready to go. And that's one of our core values at the firm. We have built for battle is our number one core value for that reason. You just have to have that. I'll drop anything and let's go down to the courthouse at any moment. If you don't have that, then this just probably isn't the right spot for you.
That's so awesome, and I love hearing one core values, and two, if this isn't the right spot for you. Instead of trying to make your firm fit, someone that's not the right fit for you, you're trying to find the people that are the right fit, and that's we're doing that too, and it's sometimes painful because you have to have some real candid conversations with people. The one of the things I heard from someone at Crisp last week was, you can stay in joy or leave in peace, but there's nothing in between.
It can be hard, right? And the firm that you are now isn't the firm that you were then, and the person you are now isn't necessarily the person you were then. And being okay to continue to grow and change together and recognize when it's no longer the right fit for you or for the firm, that can be really difficult, but necessary for everyone to really find the career that they love. None of us went to law school and put in this much effort to go to work miserable every day. And our clients don't deserve that either. And so sometimes those are the hard decisions, finding the right spot for you.
Yeah, and really, my mentality has really had to change from we're a family to we're like a sports team, because you don't fire family, and family you put up with, you always support no matter what. Whereas on a team, it's look, you got to perform. You love each other, you support each other, you celebrate each other, but you got to perform if you want to be part of the team. And you're always looking to see who else is out there. And I'm not trying to sound like I'm some cutthroat person, because I absolutely hate letting people go or firing anybody. But at the same time, that mentality. Another thing on the team is, what happens if a team loses the Super Bowl? They don't quit. You go to trial, you win, that's awesome. If you don't win, you get up the next morning, you get ready to go try to win the next one.
Absolutely. That's the analogy I always use. Everyone has a role to play on the team, and everyone has to perform for the team because we have to have that player. And so we've gotten away from the family usage too, starting small. When I started working with Javier, it was just him and I was his legal assistant for the 6 months before I started law school.
Oh, wow.
Now we have 35 employees. So we really had to grow from that family mindset where you're at everyone's birthday parties and you're there for each other and family meals and all of those things, to really growing it into something different. And that really did take a shift of mentality from family to team.
It really is. And it's hard, but it really does pay off when you do it. So you decide you want to compete. You decide to go work with Javier and be a plaintiff lawyer. What did you then do to develop the skills you needed to actually win when you competed?
The hardest part when you come out of law school is everyone tells you need experience and you need to get out there and you really need to understand what it's like to see your case up on appeal and what it's like to go to trial when you're taking depots. But how often do you really get that experience? And so I just started reading as much as I could, and I'd go down to the courthouse and I'd watch as much as I could. And I have all these books behind me. I'd listen to your podcast on road trips. And I really just started getting involved in different organizations. I think I was on our San Antonio Trial Lawyers Board before I was even licensed to practice law, because Javier would put me up. And I just chose early on in my career never to say no. So I started joining organizations. I became really active with the Texas Trial Lawyers. I've served on that executive committee for 4 years now. I'm the president of the Women's Bar. I'm the president-elect of our San Antonio Trial Lawyers now. So I just started getting really active and getting out there and getting to see as much as I could to soak up everything from everyone around me. And I think taking all of those little tidbits from everyone I learned from really then made it so that I was ready to go when my time finally came. Because sometimes it takes a while to build up to where you're really ready to take your own cases through and seeing them through.
And how long was it before you actually started trying cases?
I tried my first case when I was a 3L in law school.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
You beat me.
I
That's
tried.
awesome.
Well, that was part of the commitment that I made. I made a commitment when I was a first year law school student to Javier that I'd stay on, and we just made that pact because I loved it so much. And it's where when you find something you're passionate about, having the courage to stay put and not jump around and not search for greener pastures. That was a big decision that I made. And it meant that my 3L year, I had my own docket of cases. And so I had started going. And so I arbitrated and tried my first case as a third year law school student. And so really having that experience of, I worked on so many summary judgment responses, when we're dealing with these third party work injury cases, if it's construction or oil field, I have a summary judgment filed on every single case. And so learning very quickly how to read through depositions, how to get what I needed and get everything set up for trial was super important. So I really started as quickly as I could because that was really important to me.
And for anyone shocked who's not from Texas, in Texas you can get what's called a third-year bar card, and as long as you're supervised by a lawyer, you can legally try a case as a 3L. Just wanted just to throw that out there, just for some people saying, well, how the hell did she try a case when she was still in law school? But that is so awesome that you did. And not just a case, but like a personal injury case, right? Not like some volunteer project through law school or anything.
No, it was a non-subscriber, one of our work injury cases where companies choose to opt out of the workers' comp system here. It leaves our Texas workers unprotected. They don't get the same benefits. They're not entitled to any benefits. They're not protected by any labor laws that prohibits retaliation. So it really creates a vulnerable set of workers here in Texas that it's bigger than you'd think. Walmart chooses not to have workers' comp in Texas. So we do a lot of these cases.
And so you've had really good success on these cases too. I know you've got up on appeal right now a $4.5 million verdict on a case that you had a zero offer on?
Gosh, they pulled the offer. It was a roofing fall case. So my client was working for a sub of a sub on a roof and walks right off the edge. It was a flat roof, no fall protection. And so it was a zero offer case where they pulled the offer the week before trial. Not that it had been a real offer before then, but pulled the offer because my client had been detained and was an undocumented worker here. So he wasn't going to be able to appear at trial. So they pulled the offer. So we just had to go tee it up.
So how did you deal with, you've got a client actually, one, it's always a challenge when your client's undocumented. You can fight about whether that's going to be admissible or not, but a lot of times even when a judge excludes evidence of it, juries figure it out. But then you have it where he's in detention and can't show up to trial. How did you handle that?
The defense attorneys were really focused on that point, right? He doesn't have a loss of wage earning capacity. He, shouldn't be here. His medical bills, no one cares about the medical bills. He's really on this on his own. He needs to kind of pick up his toys and go home at this point. And we had a lot of people telling us that we just needed to get what we could for it and move on because without our client there, all we had was the defense attorney's exam of him during his deposition 2 years before, because this was a COVID delayed trial. And I just, we looked at each other and said, this is one that I'm not going to let you win. I don't care that my client's undocumented. He shouldn't have fallen off that roof. You chose not to have these protections. And we're going to go tell a story. And so we had to really make it work with his wife, trying to get her to testify. And then we really just leaned in and we used that as a push-pull point during voir dire to really get people who probably weren't our good jurors anyway, as strikes for cause and got them out of there. And we're able to then really focus on the merits of the case. So whenever the defense attorney tried to make it about, oh, well, your client's not here. Why isn't he here? It's because he's not documented. The jury was just able to roll their eyes and know that that really didn't matter. And so I think that really ended up working in our favor.
Yeah, you really have to learn to trust the jury to do that, though, to instead of trying to excuse it or to give all the reasons why he did it or try to, eliminate it out and try to somehow keep it like, we just won't talk about when my client's not here, but we won't talk about, the fact that he's not documented or in detention, which some judges would rule that way. There's mixed case law on that. You just trusted the jury, and yeah, you did get rid of a lot of jurors that had a prejudice against them, but Oh my gosh, what an important type of case, because employers who hire undocumented workers, one, they shouldn't get a bonus when they hurt them because they also chose to do something illegal. But also, those are often the workers that provide the employers that provide the worst working conditions and the least amount of the OSHA required protection, because they know that people who are undocumented aren't going to speak up.
I feel like that's the argument that I see and get the most, and is one of the most frustrating. And that's where I think our job as lawyers becomes so important, because those people on these work sites working construction without any personal protective gear, without fall protection, those aren't the people who can afford to stand up and say, no, I'm not going to work today unless you give me the right fall protection, or unless you put these guardrails up, I'm not going to show up to work. They don't have the ability or the power or the voice to say that to these home builders or these corporations, but we do. And that's the really cool, unique piece about being a plaintiff's lawyer that no one else gets to have, that I treasure every single day.
Yeah, Mallory and I tried a case a few years ago. It was a work injury trench collapse wrongful death case. And some of the challenges we had were similar. our client's name on his work documents were different than the name on the death certificate and the name on the marriage license, because he was working under another name. And then we got brought into the case really late. All the coworkers who may have been good witnesses for us also were all under other names, were no longer working there. We couldn't find any of them. We still managed to get a verdict, but it was a challenge, and the jury figured out pretty quick what was going on. So I think your strategy of just embracing it rather than trying to hide it was the right one.
I think it worked out for us well, and luckily we're here in San Antonio and we have such a great community, and we were really happy to be supported in that way by the jury's finding.
Absolutely. Hopefully the Court of Appeals will be just and let you keep the verdict too, which is always an issue in Texas. But hopefully, I know y'all did great briefings, so hopefully you'll be able to get that. So trying cases. So I want to talk a little bit how you've learned to find your voice and be a trial lawyer. I mean, you got your name on the door, you've done something right, and you've got big verdicts, not just on that one case, but other cases, and even big arbitration awards, which I think are even harder to get than jury verdicts. I know you said you've read books, you've joined things, you've watched trials, but I think it's, a real issue is that, how do you find your own voice, and is that important, or is it okay just to kind of like copy what other people do?
I learned really early on watching lawyers fail who would just get up and try to use someone else's argument, and it just wasn't true to who they were. And I really quickly identified, and my law partner was super supportive of, I can teach you and show you how I try cases and what works for me, but I just started asking him why. What is the point? What are you trying to get across? Why are you trying to make that point? Why are you doing things that way? And when I started asking people why, which became a really annoying set of circumstances for others around me, but I really wanted to know the purpose of what you were trying to do so that then I could do it for myself in my own way. And being okay to say, you may ask that 3 different ways, and I'm going to ask it 7 different ways, but we're all getting to the same point. And so when I really stopped just saying, well, show me how you would do it, but asking people why you're doing it that way or what the purpose is, that's where I really started learning how to take what other people were doing and adapt it to something that was authentic to me.
I learned the same lesson. I think you and Mallory are around the same level of experience. You both have your name on the door, similar trial experience. And trying cases with Mallory, when we first started trying cases together, she would be doing something differently than the way I would do it. And I would be wanting to write her a note. At first, I did write her a note. But then eventually, let me just sit on my hands and give her a chance and shut up for a while. And then I'd see she would get there, and her doing it her way was better than her trying to do it my way.
Exactly.
And then I just learned to trust her and let her find her way, and her way is awesome. And, it's, but it is so hard. I mean, I had to learn I don't have to give the David Ball opening. I should learn how to give a David Ball opening. I don't have to use the Jerry Spence analogy, because some of the things that work for Jerry Spence just don't work for me. Other things do. And I don't want to diss Jerry Spence. He's awesome, and thank God every day that I got to study under him. But I can't imitate him. It doesn't work. I think you have to try other things, but then you have to find how it fits for you and what works for you. And that's, I think the only way to do that is you just got to get in there and take risks and try cases.
I agree. And really reading those books with an eye for why are they doing that, or what is the point, and what can I take from each of these fantastic lawyers that rings true for me? And it could be different things in different cases. Knowing where you're at, what your case is, what your clients are, who your judge is, who the witness is, all of those things play a role when I'm doing anything in trial. And so just remembering that as long as you're true to you, you can take on any situation. But the second you try to imitate someone else, you're stuck.
I want to go a little bit more into being true to you, but I want to go from the trial context back to the law firm management context. So what's the process like from going to being a legal assistant to a young lawyer to now a partner with your name on the door? I imagine you've got something to do with running the business too.
Man, that's been a really hard transition for me because I've grown up with a lot of these people. I started working here when I just turned 22. And so being around people and having to earn respect from someone who reported to them, to then a lawyer working alongside, to then a non-equity partner, equity partner, and then senior partner name on the door, all of a sudden working alongside the same people. We've been lucky enough to have a lot of people stay around. My paralegal's been with me for 10 years through this process. My other law partner, Steven Sachs, has been with me for 13 years too. So doing all of this alongside them has been really difficult. But I think as long as you're earning respect along the way, I don't feel like I've ever been someone who said, you better call me this, or you better call me that, or you better show me this respect because I've earned it. Instead, I just want to let my work do the talking. And so I feel like if I'm still the first one here and the last one to leave, if I'm still willing to get down and dirty in any aspect of the case, and my team knows that, then I feel like I'm in a place where I don't have to tell anyone that I'm in charge. And that's what's been true for me is I don't ever look at it that way. I just try to be true to myself and let my work speak for itself.
Each year, the law firm of Cowen Rodriguez Peacock pays millions of dollars in co-counsel fees to attorneys nationwide on trucking and commercial vehicle cases. If you have an injury case involving death or catastrophic injuries and would like to partner with our firm, please contact us by calling 210-941-1301 to discuss the case in detail and see where we can add value in a partnership. And now, back to the show.
Anything you've had to do personally just to get your mindset shifted from being the coworker to being the leader?
I feel like that's taken a lot of reading in leadership. And so I'm a huge Brene Brown fan. Dare to lead, courageous, all of those things, clear as kind. I really started delving deep into that and really trying to embrace some of those things because certainly, I'm really active with the Lead Academy here in San Antonio. We put on a fantastic organization that works with young women every single year and try to retain women in the practice of law. Women, come into the practice of law in law school, but then so quickly get moved out. And we talk about, those broken rungs on the ladders for women as they're climbing up. How many women graduate from law school, but then never make it to partnership, and where's the break along the way? And so being super active and getting to help young women has really helped me gain that confidence for myself and take on those tools that are really necessary when working around a bunch of men all the time.
Yeah, tell me a little bit. I know you're really involved in a lot of organizations. What leadership roles do you hold?
Right now, I'm the Vice President of Communications for the Texas Trial Lawyers Association. I ran our CLE department for the last 3 years and gave that up to start working with communications and trying to be a little bit more effective in that area and continue to grow within that organization. I'm the president-elect of the San Antonio Trial Lawyers Association and the president of the Bexar County Women's Bar Foundation.
I did some CLE stuff a long time ago with the Texas Trial Lawyers, and I've been on committees and things before. How do you find the time? Because I have just abjectly failed at this. And I think I'm going to be president of the Academy of Truck Accident Attorneys in 2 years. I'm going to have to figure it out. So maybe you can help me. How do you find the time to be an effective leader in these unpaid positions in these important organizations and still build a great practice and maybe have a little bit of a life afterwards?
I feel like it's all about that. There is no such thing as work-life balance or career balance. And so for me, it's taken a real buy-in from everyone around me, from my family at home to my friends, to my law partners, to my paralegal. They all know and recognize that this is how I'm going to continue growing. And so they all have made that commitment to support that. So as long as you have the real buy-in around you, that my husband knows I'm probably not going to be able to pick up our 3-year-old from preschool today. You need to go do that. Or I've got to go on an overnight trip to go run a CLE somewhere. Or I have to go do this organization and put this on for this person or this team. And I'm going to be out today because I'm doing that. As long as you have buy-in from everyone around you and everyone's committed to the same goals, that's where you're going to be okay. Where you start to struggle is where you don't have that support from your partnership, and where the attorneys and staff around you or your partner at home isn't equally supportive and recognizes the role that that's going to play in you moving forward in your career. And so that's where, to me, it's important to have that communication.
Yeah, I think you really need a partner that's invested in you, that knows the, because if you're planning on being with someone for 10, 20 years, then, okay, we're going to have a short-term sacrifice this year, but we're going to build their brand, which is going to help them, which in turn helps the partnership, because, two strong people is better than one strong person and a junior person. But it's hard to find that.
I feel like you've done it really successfully with Mallory, where I know I've asked you to speak at events and you've ensured that we have Mallory there too, and that you've done the same thing in putting her up for things. I was lucky enough to find a partner who felt the same, who said, your success does not threaten me, it enhances me, and I want you to go out there and I want you to do that, and was willing to make those sacrifices, who I know has given up speaking spots or given up board seats to put my name up instead. That's really what it takes, is a commitment to saying, I care about your career growth and I want your career growth. Despite risks to me, despite you getting poached by someone, as long as you have that buy-in from everyone, you're going to be successful. And that's where you've really found a partner. You haven't just found someone to work with. You've really found a partner who cares.
Yeah, and I really look at it now. I mean, just even if I wanted to be selfish, like, okay, if I take this speaking spot, I still like to speak some, but if I take this particular spot, what do I get out of it? Whereas what would Mallory get out of it? Or what would Sonia get out of it? Or whoever else at the firm that could also do an equally great job and draw a crowd, and just take the ego out of it and say what's best for all of us. And sometimes that actually is better for me, because I don't need to be, if I'm the only draw at the firm, then my firm has very little value long term. I mean, we have Tom Rhodes, who was a great lawyer. He was here in San Antonio, but when he passed, his firm wasn't there a year later. When I pass away, I want my firm to still be there. And the only way I can do that is if the other partners at the firm, have their own brand, their own following, can keep bringing in business. Just want to make sure that doesn't happen. I'm sure how, not that we want either Javier or me to pass anytime soon.
Of course not. But I think that goes back to the same thing, right? As long as you're true to yourself and that you really genuinely care about the partners that you have working with you, and you know that you can be yourself and that you can build your career and that you can be focused on doing that because it ultimately benefits your firm and your clients at the end of the day. As long as you all have that same goal, you're going to be in a position to find success.
Now, your firm, in Texas, shortly before I graduated from law school, they took the money out of representing injured workers and workers' compensation cases. I mean, the fees are so limited and it's so hard to get paid. And if you do get paid, it's very, very little. And there are very few firms that do workers' compensation in Texas, but y'all do. How come?
Because that's our purpose, right? That's our base. We also found that a lot of times people just think that it's a workers' comp case and it's not. And we started learning that we could help people in more than one way. And so if we fought to get one client, well, wouldn't it be great if we could represent that client 3 different ways with 3 different divisions at the firm? So sometimes we'll represent a client in a workers' comp case while also helping them in a workers' comp retaliation case and handling a third-party injury case because their injury happened due to the fault of someone else. And so it's really helped because we've been able to manage the workers' comp piece, because a lot of times, how many times have you had one of these third-party injury cases and the workers' comp attorney has done something and given something up that has had a negative impact on your litigation case? Well, we were able to kind of get rid of that because we're representing them in different ways. So I'm able to push buttons in workers' comp that I wouldn't otherwise be able to if I didn't share a building with the workers' comp attorney who was helping this person. So it really helped us kind of develop that practice and really flesh out that focus on work-related injuries, which is what we're all passionate about anyway.
And I'm so happy to have someone I'm so happy to have someone competent in town we can refer people that need to make a workers' comp claim to. I mean, obviously it's not a line of business in Texas where you're going to ask for referral fees or anything, but just the fact that someone can help, because people get so screwed over because they designed the system where the insurance company has a lawyer and the worker can't afford to have one. So I'm so glad that y'all are doing that.
The system's broken, absolutely, but my law partner here is our only board certified plaintiff's workers' comp attorney in the city. And there's just so few that do it really well. And so I'm really blessed that we were able to get her to join us, and that she has those same core values and cares as much about our clients on that side of the building as we do in ours. Even though you're right, the business model makes it really difficult and there's lots of complaints, but that's just the nature of the workers' comp system here in Texas, and I'm sure across the country.
Yeah, just Texas, other parts of the country, you can at least make a fee that's comparable to, let's say, doing minimum policy limits auto litigation as opposed to, waiting tables.
It's pretty tough. It means it's a pretty high volume practice, which can be difficult for us to balance, but we really found it's the only way for us to make sure that we're doing our part in the community. And sometimes that means that this part of our business just has to run because it's the right thing to do and because that's what the community needs.
I love that. You said you do something called workers' comp retaliation. Not all of our people are Texas lawyers. They're listening here. What is that?
So in most states too, part of your labor code is going to prohibit companies from retaliating against employees who try to pursue workers' comp benefits. And the thought there is that, just like a car insurance would, if you're filing workers' comp claims, your rates are going to go up. And so a lot of times companies will try to discriminate or retaliate against employees in order to avoid having to have higher premiums. And so we have an entire division, and I have a law partner, Steven Sachs, who just works on those cases primarily. And so he'll run a docket of 100 of those at a time and just pursue those. So it happens more often than you think. We've gotten some pretty interesting recordings over the years, and it's pretty sad to see, people who actually work for the state representing to companies, how they can avoid these claims or how they can get rid of people who do it. The whole system is just pretty wonky here, but if you check out your labor codes, I bet in most other states, you'll find a similar provision that protects injured workers.
Texas, I don't know if it's unique to Texas, but it's at least very rare if there are any other states that do it. But, we allow companies to opt out of the workers' compensation system and be what's called non-subscribers. There's a slight penalty. They lose a couple of affirmative defenses, but not all of their affirmative defenses. And a lot of those cases, the company, especially the big sophisticated companies, they not only opt out of workers' comp, but they opt out of the court system by forcing their employees to sign arbitration agreements, which seem to be enforced fairly regularly. How do you get justice in arbitration?
Gosh, I don't know that there is any such thing as justice in arbitration. I feel like that's that's an impossible statement. When you have someone who's paid by companies that essentially run entire arbitration associations, we have one here in Texas that one of the big box retailers essentially provides 80% of the business of this one arbitration association. And so all of the judges in that arbitration association who get paid to hear disputes essentially have an entire career deciding cases for one big box retailer. And so you can imagine what the motivation would be for them to do something that favors my client, who this is the one and only time they're ever going to hear from them, rather than this big box retailer who's going to make their careers. So what the studies have shown is that just as big box retailers or companies that are frequently in arbitration find success, so do plaintiffs' lawyers. And so we'll have the same arbitrators show up, and we have such a large practice of these arbitration cases that we also have some power with arbitrators because they know that we can keep them from getting business too if they want to screw our clients over. And so we've had a lot of success. I remember we lost one before I even started law school, and that case kind of became the foundation for the law review article that I wrote during law school with Javier. And that's the only one that we've lost over the years. So knock on wood, we've had a lot of success, but it's getting out there, being aggressive, making sure that your name stays up, listening to your fellow trial lawyers around you. When they tell you not to pick an arbitrator, we tend to listen. So we keep stats on them just the same way defense insurance companies do. And that's given us a lot of success over the years.
Well, I've had, two that we lost where the arbitrator just took the defendant's brief and word and just changed it from defendant's brief to, decision. It was very disheartening. I won one a long time ago, and luckily it was for a judge's nephew, so I was so glad I didn't lose that one. Lost two, and then we settled another one. But it is pretty disheartening where you feel like you've totally dominated this case. That you've got OSHA violations, you've got that are causal, and then they just still find a way to kill you, and it's really really disheartening.
And then
But
you
I'm
have no
glad.
appeal. So it's hard to tell your clients that then even if they get it wrong, there's nothing we can do about it. But I can tell you it sure is nice to have some finality quickly. When you're sitting on a verdict for a couple years, whereas if it had been in arbitration, this would have been done and paid within 30 days. So there are some things that we can look at and say, at least we can get something done quickly for our clients in arbitration. But for the most part, we just have to tell them that the case is different and the nature of the case is different. And it's a bench trial on steroids.
So how is trying an arbitration case different than the trial of a jury case?
Trying an arbitration case is unlike trying a case to a jury because the judge is the judge and the jury and the appellate court all at the same time. So you have to keep in mind that there is nothing that the judge is going to know that they're not going to take into account. You have to keep in mind that the judge isn't going to pay attention to evidentiary rules. I had a case once where they did not designate experts, brought an expert live who had never been designated. And the arbitrator let them testify that my client's injuries could not have been caused by this because they were degenerative, even though I'd never seen their opinions, had not been familiar with this expert at all. But it was a big box retailer, and congratulations, we're just going to bring it in. And the arbitrator will say, I'm just going to hear all the evidence. So you're not going to exclude experts. You're not going to have evidentiary issues get decided. You're going to have speaking objections through the whole thing. You're going to work from 7 a.m. through 8 o'clock at night. I can tell you, we had an arbitration that went 3 days where we worked 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. every single day and put on
Wow.
35 witnesses over a 2.5 day period because everyone wanted to get home. So it's definitely a different experience, but we just try to be as aggressive as possible and put on our case the same way that we would if we were in trial, and have found that to be a successful method to pursuing these.
I'm so glad you're doing those because someone needs. I'm so glad you all find success too. I think that probably is the thing because people like me that do one or two every 10 years, they don't care about us. Whereas, yeah, I can see you have a strike list too. So if you're doing like half the business and you start striking the people that screw you all over, they have to start splitting the baby at least.
Yep, exactly. That's what the studies have shown, and that's what we found anecdotally. So, but again, that's where, participating with your trial lawyers associations, asking, who have you seen on the strike list? Who are you familiar with? Who should I strike? We all have to collectively as a community make sure that we're protecting each other too.
So you all do workers' comp. I've seen, I've been blessed enough to have some workplace injury cases where, I had one where like a really, really prominent lawyer told the referral counsel, no, this is comp barred. And we ended up settling for $5 million. And a lot of other cases where, people just, I was having a conversation with someone, so yeah, this is such a tragedy. This person got this happened to them, but it's just all comp. And we found an angle. So for what we call the third-party cases, which is you're suing someone other than the employer for a workplace injury, what are the things you look for?
We look for multi-employer work sites. So a lot of times your construction fields, your warehouses, your manufacturing facilities, your oil fields, there's going to be someone else who's there who potentially had control. And that's what it's always about. What is the control over the injury producing activity here in Texas? And I think that that's probably true in most states in terms of what you're looking for. But most of the time we have referring attorneys that just send us any workplace injury and let us mine for what's there. And a lot of times it turns out that it's a non-subscriber or that you can find some control of some other company. And ultimately, or even if it's a discrimination case, sometimes it completely is comp barred, but there's so many co-employees and borrowed servants and temp staffing companies that will staff places that usually there's something that we can do. There's very few times where I find that something is completely comp barred and there's nothing else that we can do about it.
And I find a lot of times the clients don't even know who works for who or anything, and they get confused about it. And, if you have a big enough injury, it's at least worth making some phone calls, getting an investigator, signing it up and seeing what you can figure out. You can always let it go later, or,
Absolutely.
just a comp case, send it to a comp lawyer, but it's always worth, anytime you have a serious injury, I think it's always worth the deep dive to see what there is, or even a product case. You never know until you look.
Absolutely. Especially when you're here in Texas, or Oklahoma has a similar non-subscriber statute where you can opt out if you have a certain number of employees. So a few other states have some opt-out provisions. So it's always good to really take a look and make sure that there's nothing else you can do for them. A lot of times the contracts have subrogation waivers. So a lot of times we're able to get workers' comp to waive subrogation. And that really means that this is just extra money in your client's pocket, because I can promise you workers' comp doesn't give them much. And so anything that you can do to find some additional recovery for your client's worth the time investment.
Yeah, I felt so good. We settled one for $14 million once, and they were so mad because there was a comp waiver. There was a subro waiver in the policy, and they were so mad that they still have to make his weekly check because he was burned badly enough to have lifetime benefits. So not only did he not have to pay it back, but they got to pay his medical treatment. They have to pay his weekly wages, even though he did really well in that settlement. And that
There's
felt
no
so
better
good.
No better feeling than telling an insurance company that thank you for this and go away and keep paying my client, by the way.
Exactly. All right, everyone. It's been great talking to you, Laura. I'm glad that I'm able to practice in the same town as you, and I look forward to continuing to work with you and learn from you in the future. If people want to, find your path and continue learning, I'd want to selfishly pitch the Big Rig Bootcamp that we're having here in San Antonio on July 12th. I don't know if you're going to be able to make it, Laura, but if so, people can meet you in person there. It's going to be a great thing. We're doing a deep dive into things that we've never been able to do before. For example, trucking, one of the big things is called telematics, where they put on these GPS systems that track, and they track speed, braking. We bought a system where we're testing it, and we're going to show, when a truck driver speeds, what is the alert the trucking company can get? How can they set it up to make sure they don't go over a certain speed on a curve, even though that might not be the speed limit, but let's say a water truck can't safely go around the curve at that speed. It's going to be some really cool, deep dive stuff that, frankly, you don't have time to get into, or not everyone has the willingness to share it at some of the other CLEs. So we're really, if you all want to come to that, it's bigrigbootcamp.com. It's cheap, it's fun, come on board. And then, Laura, if anyone wants to find you in the world, either they want to follow up with you on something, or maybe they have a case they want to talk to you about, how can people find you?
Well, let me say first, I can personally attest to you have such fantastic presentations that you give here and across the country. And you're one of those lawyers that I know I can pick up the phone and ask you for an expert or a form, and you all stumble over yourselves to help all of us in the legal community. And so thank you for taking the time and effort to build this Big Rig Bootcamp and give such important information to everyone. You really do such a great job for not only your clients, but for everyone else's, and making sure that we're all setting our cases up the right way to the benefit of the client. So thank you for all the work that you do. My name is Lara, Lara, at EspinozaBrock.com. So happy to take any emails or do anything I can to help anyone who has any questions about workplace injuries or arbitration. I'm always happy to help pass it along.
And Laura's email's in the show notes. She and her firm do such a great job on those cases. I do really recommend them. So thank you so much for joining us, Laura, and thank everyone for listening, and join us next time on Trial Lawyer Nation.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us on Trial Lawyer Nation. I hope you enjoyed our show. If you'd like to receive updates, insider information, and more from Trial Lawyer Nation, sign up for our mailing list at triallawyernation.com. You can also visit our episodes page on the website for show notes and direct links to any resources in this or any past episode. To help more attorneys find our podcast, please like, share, and subscribe to our podcast on any of our social media outlets. If you'd like access to exclusive, plaintiff lawyer-only content and live monthly discussions with me, send a request to join the Trial Lawyer Nation Insider Circle Facebook group. Thanks again for tuning in. I look forward to having you with us next time on Trial Lawyer Nation.
Each year, the law firm of Cowen Rodriguez Peacock pays millions of dollars in co-counsel fees to attorneys nationwide on trucking and commercial vehicle cases. If you have an injury case involving death or catastrophic injuries and would like to partner with our firm, please contact us by calling 210-941-1301 to discuss the case in detail and see where we can add value in a partnership. This podcast has been hosted by Michael Cowen and is not intended to, nor does it create the attorney-client privilege between our host, guest, and any listener for any reason. Content from the podcast is not to be interpreted as legal advice. All thoughts and opinions expressed herein are only those from which they came.